Hello class. In this video, let's talk about what is the scope of the term needs assessment. So before I talk on this topic, I would like for you to take a moment, perhaps pause this video, and write down a definition of needs assessment. So I believe you now have a definition of needs assessment. Let's see what the authors Witkin and Alshood have for us as a definition of needs assessment. So here is the definition. I have highlighted the important components. So let's talk about each of these components. The first component highlighted is systematic approach, which means that in order to conduct needs assessment, a needs analyst has to follow certain set procedures and steps. You will see this when we discuss some other components of this definition. The next component is phases. Needs assessment is completed in 3 phases: pre-assessment phase, assessment phase, and post-assessment phase. We will discuss these phases in more details in the next few weeks. For now, pre-assessment is the first stage where a needs analyst, based on the available information, prepares a proposal stating the existing need to be addressed based on a problem presented by the hiring organization. What is it that we know about the problem and the justification of the need to be addressed based on the available information? In this phase, the needs analyst also presents the timelines and budgets so that a commitment can be obtained from the hiring organization to conduct the needs assessment. In the assessment stage, you actually collect the data and analyze to provide evidence to either support or reject the need identified in the pre-assessment phase. The final phase is post-assessment, where you will present the results and make recommendations based on the data you collected in phase 2. Although the needs assessment stage formally can be divided into 3 phases, sometimes, or most of the time, these boundaries are blurry. This means the phases has a cyclical pattern, which means you may be going back and forth in between the phases, depending on a lot of factors, such as the nature of the need, the problem, the organizational structure, politics, people involved in the needs assessment process, and other such similar reasons. All right, so let's move on to the next component in the definition, which is established procedures and methods. I have already talked about some of these when I discussed the 3 phases of conducting the needs assessment. We also talked about how you will be learning and applying a gamut of methods as appropriate in your needs assessment project. Now let's move on to one of the important components, which is setting priorities and determining criteria for solutions. Now you may be wondering that often priorities are set because of financial limitations, budgetary constraints, or manpower shortage, and similar other things. However, I am not referring to the priorities in this sense here. In this definition, priority is not of resources, but of the needs that requires most attention. As a needs analyst, it is your skill that will allow you to make recommendations about which need is urgent and requires immediate attention, and therefore prioritize accordingly. This component then ties into the next component, which is action that improves the organizational workability. So as a needs analyst, you will prioritize from the list of the needs that you may have identified based on how will the implementation of the recommendations made by the needs analyst may change or impact the organization for whom you're conducting the needs analysis. And finally, the question of budget. So as needs analyst, you have to work in the constraints of the budget that the organization has assigned for this project. So I believe by reviewing this definition now, we have established a common understanding of what is needs assessment. You can now compare your definition with this one and see what components were present in this definition that were not part of your definition. And of course, other way around too, because no definition is complete and all inclusive. You may then come up with a more comprehensive understanding of what needs assessment process is.